I was very clear that like launching just another pair of jeans that sort of fits, sort of is okay, wasn't going to move the needle in this industry. People in the horse industry are so loyal to the brands that they like, that they use, that they ride in, that people are not going to change unless there's a very good reason to change what products they use. So I knew these jeans had to be so head and shoulders above anything else on the market or it wouldn't even be worth it. So to me, it was like, we have to invest this money up front to go through this prototyping process to actually end up with something that people might try. Because if we just launch like a pair of jeans that are just like everything else, nobody's going to try them.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Stable Exchange podcast. On today's episode, we are chatting with Whitney from MarkWest Denim. This episode feels a little extra special because we have had the pleasure of working with Whitney over the course of a few years. First, as she was conceptualizing her brand, MarkWest Denim, a few years ago, all the way through this past summer when we finally got to put all of the pieces together and help her launch her new website. And Whitney's story is so inspirational as a first-time founder, navigating so many ups and downs and learning lessons throughout the process, and eventually selling out her very first launch and run of jeans. So I'm very excited for you guys to hear from Whitney so you can get some insight into what it takes to create an apparel item with new technical, innovative features for the equestrian industry and build and grow a personal brand behind the scenes to make a launch super, super successful. So I hope you all enjoy, and I can't wait to hear what you think. So, Whitney, I think a lot of our listeners will relate to the fact that you started riding at a very early age, took a little bit of a hiatus as an adult, and then came back into the horse world, picking up riding again as an adult. When you first re-entered the quarter horse world, what was the first thing you noticed about what was available from a denim perspective as you started doing all those fun things, kind of buying all of the new gear that you needed to get back into riding?
Yeah, so obviously, as you can imagine, if you ride Western, your jeans are incredibly important, right? You wear them every single day. That's like the most important garment in your wardrobe, I think. So when I came back to the horses after being out of the industry for 14 years, obviously the style had changed a lot. I came from an era of wearing like a high-waisted, tapered leg, Cruel Girl jeans, like Wrangler 20X. That was kind of the vibe when I was a kid. So the jeans had changed a ton, and I had like never sold my jeans because it was like a way, it was kind of like not selling your saddle, right? It was like a way to be like, oh, I'm getting back to this someday. But I realized like these jeans are tragically out of style and like I cannot wear these. So I started paying attention to what like all the cool girls at the horse shows had on. And I just started being like, okay, one of these jeans that I see people wearing has to be like the jean. So I ordered them all. I tried them all. And I just honestly felt like they all kind of sucked in their own way. I just never found anything that I liked. And I just continued to like keep ordering, keep trying, keep all the things. And I just couldn't find anything I liked, which I think kind of planted the first seed that I was going to start MarkWest. And I think that seed was planted, several years before I actually took any formal steps to do it.
Yes, I was curious because, so many of us create either our business, whether it's a product or a service, out of some need that we have or a specific problem that we identify that we want to solve. So, I think it's so cool that you took a product that kind of historically lacks innovation, especially from a functional perspective. We see different styles in terms of trends for fashion, but not necessarily something that performs while we're riding. So when you had that first little inkling in your mind of, okay, I'm trying all of these brands, I can't find exactly what I want. Did you think in that moment you would actually go through with creating your own product to solve that problem? Or did you have to kind of come to that decision over a certain period of time?
I think it took me several years to really come to that decision. I think the moment where like I kind of that sort of inkling in my head kind of formalized was I can remember being at a show in Florida and sitting around the barn aisle with some friends from the barn, and everyone was complaining about a very popular brand of jeans, which will remain nameless in our industry, and complaining about how the thigh, like where your leg meets the saddle on that brand, is kind of notorious for like rubbing thin and wearing out as you ride. And so people were kind of like voicing their displeasure with how this happens. And I remember saying like offhand, and I had a pair of that brand on, and the thigh on my jeans, the threads were coming out of, and I remember being like, yeah, that's what they do on me too. And I remember saying just kind of offhand, like, I really think I could like come up with a better pair of riding jeans that are out there. And then that sort of like statement just kind of stuck around in my brain. And that show is at the very beginning of the year, like after Christmas into New Year's. And it was like probably 6 months later that like I'd kind of rolled that idea around in my head and then decided to actually like start looking into how to actually make that happen.
I love that, you and your friends kind of both or we're all experiencing the same thing. And I think so often when we have a product that's kind of tried and true, kind of stays the same, doesn't really have a lot of innovation, we almost just accept it as, well, it is what it is. That's just how jeans are supposed to feel. It's just something that we're supposed to deal with. So I think it's very cool that you saw those problems and said, well, we shouldn't just accept this as the norm. We should go further and see how we can make this better and improve it. So once you came to that decision and you said, okay, this is it, I'm going for it, do you remember what that very first action step you took was? Was it doing research to figure out how you even get a garment made? Did you sketch it first? What was that like super granular first piece of action?
So I think my first step towards this was pretty unconventional. And it's not really necessarily what I would recommend looking back. But I, for some reason, felt strongly that before I could create a product and have any sort of success selling it, that people needed to know me, and they needed to feel connected to me in some way, to feel like I was one of them, that I understood them, their life, their problems, their horses. So my first step was actually to start building my own personal brand on Instagram. Um, and the first way I did that was I signed up for On Course, which is how you and I met. I'd been following Erin Lane and Allie Justin, I think is how you say her last name, on social media, and had really been enjoying what they were doing with their personal Instagram accounts. This was back in 2022. And so they offered this course, right, to kind of teach people how to build a brand on social media. And so I joined that course. That was kind of my first like concrete step toward it, because I thought, okay, they can teach me like how I actually practically go about sort of creating this following on social media. And I thought I'm also going to meet a lot of other people in the horse industry, and the horse industry is so small regardless of what discipline you're in. Everybody sort of has that bond that we all love horses. It doesn't matter how you ride. And, somebody's going to know somebody that will, either work in the apparel industry or something like that, that's going to, one person leads to another, leads to another. And maybe that will help me kind of start to get a start on how you make a garment that's designed for equestrians.
I love that you mentioned you started with a personal brand, because that is one of the aspects to creating a business or marketing your business that is often so intimidating for people. And I think it ends up being something that holds people back. And I think you are one of the most incredible success stories, honestly, for someone who took the time to build a personal brand intentionally before even telling their audience exactly what they were doing and creating. And the reason why that's so important is because you were able to build that connection off of trust and authenticity and a genuine connection versus starting that process once you already had something to sell them. So I love that you took the intentional steps to do that. And yeah, I almost forgot that that was how we originally met,
Yeah.
was through that on-course
Yeah. Yeah, you
program.
taught, like, an amazing, module in that course, right, about, like, your website and branding and colors, and I can remember I still lived in my, like, city girl condo in Chicago at that time. I can remember it was in the summer, I was sitting, like, on the back deck at my condo with my laptop, like, watching your module and being like, "This is amazing. This woman, like, totally knows her stuff. She has to do my website someday." So yeah, so I got a lot from that course. I actually got a lot of close personal friendships from the people in that group. So it was very impactful for me. And that's really where I kind of got started on this idea.
Yeah, it sounds like it was exactly what you needed at just the right time to just kind of
Yeah,
kickstart things. Well,
absolutely.
we're going to dive into the branding process because I think that the way that you've named your business and the legacy that you're building is really important. Before we get there, I want to go back a little bit to how you started the process of actually designing and developing the jeans. So, once you said, okay, I'm ready to start building my personal brand, while behind the scenes, I'm going to actually start the process of figuring out my key features, who I'm going to work with. What were those next steps you took there to actually start developing the jeans?
Yeah, so again, through somebody involved with through that from that on-course group, there was a woman who she had previously been a buyer, like an apparel buyer for tax stores. And so I was basically trying to connect with anyone in that group who had any sort of experience in the apparel equestrian world. And so I remember I talked to her on the phone, and she, didn't really know anything about denim, but she um gave me some insights into kind of some of what she knew about the apparel world and whatever. And then she sort of offhand mentioned that she would be happy to like do a little research for me and see if she could like see if she knew anybody who knew anyone in the denim industry or whatever. And so I said sure. I was like working full time at my real job, and I was like, yeah, any help that I can get is great. And I didn't really expect she would come up with anything, but you never know. So she actually sent me an email later that day and was like, "Hey, I did a little research and I actually ran across a LinkedIn profile of a denim designer, and
Wow.
maybe you should contact her." And several months kind of elapsed, and I had talked to a few different factories. I knew I wanted to make the jeans here in the U.S., so I was very focused on that, and I had a few conversations, just kind of reaching out on my own, and was pretty confident that I was going to go with one place. And then before I kind of made that final decision, I was like, let me look back at that email that she had sent me and just see if there's anything there that I should consider. So I went back to that email and I saw that LinkedIn profile again, and decided, well, I guess I'm just going to send this denim designer an email. Maybe she can offer me some insight into how the process works, or maybe she has a contact that I could talk to. So I reached out to her. Her name is Christine Rushi. She's been in the denim industry for 40 years and has designed for, Tommy Hilfiger, Ralph Lauren, like anybody that you can think of that makes
Yeah.
like, jeans in the US. Um, so I reached out to her, and then I found out that she actually has a business now where she works with like startup denim brands to kind of take you through the process of developing your jean and all of that. So I felt very confident after I talked to her that like she was the person who could help me take this idea in my head and turn it into reality. So yeah, so I hired Christine and started working with her. And she and I had a meeting basically when we started where I sent her in advance of that meeting, I sent her the jeans that were currently on the market that were popular. I sent her up like two of my pairs of jeans and said like, okay, these are what's out there. And I sort of told her like, here's what I don't like about these jeans. Here's what sort of works. And then I gave her like this list of features because, as you know, MarkWest has like some very unique features which we've now patented, which are really cool. So I
Amazing.
so I sent her like the jeans. I sent her what I wanted to do, and we kind of just took it from there in terms of actually turning the idea in my head into a pattern that then a garment maker could make an actual pair of jeans out of.
Wow. I haven't heard you share that in as much detail. That's super cool. And I think it's such a good reminder for people to really trust the process of building a network because it sounds like so many the important people that you've met along the way, especially Christine, just came as a result of really smart networking and putting yourself out there and being intentional. And, not many people in the horse industry think to use LinkedIn. So I love that you
Yeah.
mentioned that too, because it's not just for,
Like corporate jobs. Yeah,
corporate
exactly.
jobs.
Yeah.
We can
Yeah. I
use it too.
yeah, I mean, LinkedIn is kind of crazy. I feel like LinkedIn's kind of having like a resurgence lately with people using it. But,
Yeah.
I hadn't really like used LinkedIn since I was, I don't know, in college, basically. But that was kind of it was a random place to sort of find her, but that's where I found her.
Yeah.
So
A
yeah, and it
message to
was,
to
yeah,
all of
definitely
us horse girls, don't sleep on LinkedIn.
exactly. Yeah.
So when you sent Christine your list of features, I would love for you to talk about the features that the jeans have now versus maybe the first couple of features that you sent Christine, because I think the evolution of that is important to touch on. Like, where did the jeans start, and then where did they eventually end up now?
So it's funny, the jeans started with all of the features that they have now. I was
Oh,
very clear that these were the features I wanted, and I like was not going to compromise until we got to a garment that actually had all of those features and actually like really fit and flattered and worked in the saddle. So I came in with this like a fully formed idea of what I wanted the features to be, and then we just kept so all of the features, so like the hidden cell phone pocket, the comfort ride gusset to eliminate the waistband that doesn't gap, the legs that don't twist, that was all like part of the idea from the very beginning. But what took us so long was refining the fit so that it really fits and is comfortable and works for women of different sizes. Um, so yeah, so I think it was actually dialing in that fit, which is really pretty magical. It's kind of amazing to see how it fits people of different sizes and shapes and ages. I think that is really what was more challenging than developing the features themselves.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know you mentioned you went through was it 8 prototypes
Yeah.
from start to
Yeah. Which
finish?
is way more than anyone else makes. I mean, most brands might make 2 prototypes because the
Wow.
prototype process is expensive and it takes a long time. And like if you're trying to build a business and trying to get revenue coming in the door, you're not going to spend a lot of time you know, prototyping something. You're more likely to get something that sort of works and put it out there
Mhm.
so you can start making sales and getting some revenue coming in the door. I was very clear that like launching just another pair of jeans that sort of fits, sort of is okay, wasn't going to move the needle in this industry. People in the horse industry are so loyal to the
Yes.
brands that they like, that they use, that they ride in, that people are not going to change unless there's a very good reason to change what products they use. So I
Yes.
knew these jeans had to be so head and shoulders above anything else on the market that, or it wouldn't even be worth it. So to me, it was like, we have to invest this money up front to go through this prototyping process to actually end up with something that people might try. Because if we just launch like a pair of jeans that are just like everything else, nobody's going to try them. So
Yes. And people don't necessarily need something that's necessarily more stylish. They need something that performs better. So I can see how, along with all the features, the fit has to be there, because at the end of the day, no one wants to wear something that's not comfortable. So I
yeah.
think that's such a testament to the quality and how much you were willing to sacrifice in the time that you were willing to put into this because it's so hard if you launch something and it's not quite right the first time. It's so hard to win that trust back and to get people to buy into something that's totally new if you kind of miss the mark on the first one. So I think that was a really smart decision. So
Yeah.
often we talk about that idea of sometimes taking messy action, but in your case, I think it was really smart that you were more methodical and really wanted to get it right from the start, because everything that you did in that pre-launch phase of building your personal brand was building that trust and authenticity. So to then not deliver on that, I think could have fallen a little flat. So I think that was really smart.
Yeah, I
Now,
think that's some common advice people get, right? Is to just like any action's better than none. Just launch the product, take the feedback, and improve it. That's like very common advice that you get sort of in like the general business startup e-com product world. Like, you listen to a podcast and you're gonna hear some expert who's made, $10 million in their first year, like tell you that. But like the horse industry is different, right? Like,
yes.
and people are just, they're like you. I think you said it perfectly. They're not. They're not going to try you again if they didn't have a good experience with the first product. They're just going to
Yes.
go back to what they know.
Yes.
So for me, it was like, no, we're not just like launching something and coming up with a better product later. Like this has got to sort of, when people put it on, it's got to like kind of knock their socks off, or they're not going to switch.
Yes.
They're just going to keep wearing. They've got, 20 pairs of jeans in their closet already. They don't need another pair of jeans that are just okay. We have to build something that is like really, really extraordinary. So
Yes.
that's why we took so long to do it.
Yeah. And something that people want to brag about too, because your customers will be your best influencers for your
Yeah.
brand if you get it
Yeah.
right. You don't necessarily want, big influencers in the industry. All of your customers are going to be the best micro influencers that you'll ever have. I think that
Yeah.
idea of messy action works for things where the stakes aren't super high, like posting content, testing different
Yes.
content, little things like that you can
Yeah.
fix and alter along the way. But when it comes to in creating a product that is a little bit of an investment piece too, like we said, it's so important to get it right.
Yeah.
So when we met in 2022, the name MarkWest was kind of still to be determined. A little bit of the
Yeah.
work we did at the beginning of the process was kind of working through some names. And a lot of people might not know this, but MarkWest almost went by a different name in the very
It
beginning.
did. Yeah.
But I think it ended up landing perfect where it is now, because what's
Yeah.
so important in the Western industry is the idea of building that legacy. Family legacy plays a big role. I would
Yeah.
love for you to go a little bit deeper into the name if people don't know where the name MarkWest came from.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you were a huge sounding board when I was trying to figure out the name that we were going to move forward with, and it took us quite a while. But I love the name Mark West for a lot of reasons. So the name actually is kind of a dual meaning. The first is that I think the type of woman who wears Mark West jeans is the type of woman who's going to put her own mark on the Western world. The Western world is somewhere that is a place that's very steeped in tradition, can kind of get stuck in its ways a lot of times. But, women are just a huge catalyst in the industry. I think broadly in the US, like 70% of horse owners are women. And in the Western world, you look around at a horse show, a rodeo, whatever, and there are just so many women there. So women are a big driver in the industry, and the type of woman who's going to be kind of like brave enough or forward looking enough to try a new innovative product like this is I just know she's going to be the type of woman who's going to kind of put her own spin on things and really leave her own mark on the Western world, and maybe do things a little differently than what how the industry's operated in the past. And I think that's really true. I think, our customers are, they're early adopters, right? And they're super enthusiastic and kind and welcoming to people in the industry. And that's very important to me, that community that we've started to build around the brand. So that's one meaning behind the name. The other part is that it's also inspired by my grandpa Mark, who is the person who introduced me to horses. He grew up farming in the Great Depression and raising draft horses. So the first horse I ever sat on was a crazy pony named Daisy that he kept on his farm for me and my cousins. He'd take me to our county fair every summer. Back then we had a whole barn of draft horses, and he knew everybody. So he'd, take me around and show me those horses. And, he was just the sweetest man, the most genuine, giving, caring guy, and just tremendously well respected in our community, and just meant a lot to me, obviously, but also to anybody who had the privilege of knowing him. So it's kind of my way of honoring him. Without him and the very successful business he built as a farmer, which is a very hard industry to do it in, I would not have had so many opportunities in my life, including the opportunity to start this very business.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very grateful to him and my grandmother for everything they did for our family.
I love that story. It probably is hard for you to imagine, you know, him introducing you to horses as a kid and neither of you knowing where that would lead you now, building this incredible brand and career off of that first source of inspiration.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I begged my parents for riding lessons and they got me riding lessons for Christmas when I was 7. And I think, they thought my parents are not horse people at all. And I think they thought, it would be like any extracurricular a kid gets started and you go
Yeah.
a few times and you take some lessons and, you move on to dance or soccer or whatever. And I have literally never moved on, ever. I started taking lessons in January in Michigan. It was cold. Like what kid is going to be like, sign me up to do this every day of the week? But I
Yes.
was. And so I'm much to their chagrin. They could have gone on many more nice vacations and enjoyed their lives a lot more if I wasn't always, wanting to go to a horse show or needing a new horse or a new show outfit or whatever. But I've been
Yeah.
incredibly fortunate to have parents who worked extremely hard to
Mhm.
create opportunities for me to do this. So very, very
Yeah.
lucky to have that.
I think a lot of fellow horse girls will relate to that because I think a lot of times it either starts as, a week at pony camp or a one-off lesson or a trail ride. And no one ever thinks at the time that it's something that just gets you hooked instantly and sticks around. So I think, once a horse girl, always a horse girl.
Oh yeah, I think that's true. And it doesn't matter if you're, it's been years since you rode, but if you've ever been a horse girl, you will always be a horse girl, even if you're not
Yes.
in the industry anymore, even if you're not active. It's just it gets in your blood and you cannot let it go. You just can't. So,
Yes. And sometimes, there's a good reason that we always come back to it. A lot
yeah.
of the conversations I've been having with other people on the Stable Exchange so far is that a common thread is that we always seem to come back to the idea of horses and build a business or a career in the industry that's very different than what we may have ever thought was possible. Because for
Oh
so
yeah.
long as a kid, you think, okay, if I want to work in the industry, I have to be a barn owner, a barn manager, a trainer, a professional rider. But look
Mhm.
at all of the other incredible opportunities that you wouldn't find if you didn't continuously come back and build your community of fellow horse people.
Yeah, and I think that the internet, right, and social media
It's
has
true.
changed that so much. Because when I was a kid, yeah, like, initially, I thought I wanted to be a vet. I went to vet camp, in, like, junior high, which was an amazing experience, had the best time, but very
That's
quickly
so
realized
cool.
yeah, actually, the university I ended up going to has a very good vet program, and they did this vet camp, which was amazing, but I realized I would be a terrible vet, so I kinda dropped that ambition. I always knew I was not talented enough as a rider to be a trainer. Um, and, I thought about when I was in college, I thought about like going into marketing for, like the American Quarter Horse Association. That was something I was very interested in doing at the time. Um, but I didn't actually end up pursuing that. So yeah, it's like I think when we were kids, right, there was a much more limited sort of opportunities in the horse world. But thanks to the internet and social media, I think the opportunities that exist in the industry are a lot different now.
Yep.
And I think a lot of us kind of have realized like, oh wait, there's something we could create that lets us like, ride horses on a morning instead of being in an office somewhere. And like,
Yes.
how can we take a piece of that for ourselves and make that our reality? And, nothing
Yes.
motivates us more than knowing that horse bill is coming due and trying to create opportunities to be in the saddle. Like we will work and scrape and claw
Yes.
and do whatever we have to do to make that a reality in our lives. And that's something that's very different about horse girls is like we are so driven and so motivated by
Mhm.
the opportunity to ride, which I think makes us very successful in anything that we do.
I agree. It brings a lot of grit and determination. And
Mhm.
even if it ends up not being something that pays all of your bills, at least if it's something that can cover those horse bills, that's
Yeah.
usually good enough for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
So, during the time when you were spending, what was it, probably about 3 years, you were in this
Yeah.
prototyping phase. we've talked about the fact that while you were working on those prototypes, you were simultaneously building your brand. So you kind of had the behind the scenes of building the prototypes and then kind of front facing with your audience, building your brand. But you didn't necessarily tell your audience in the beginning exactly what you were working on until you got a little bit closer to the jeans being made.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about the how you decided what would stay private versus what would be public, because I imagine it was probably really difficult to not share such a big part of your life while you were creating something that you knew your audience was absolutely going to love.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I wish I could remember who told me this, but somebody told me early on when I was starting to, make more content and share more on social media that your page is yours and you don't have to share anything that you don't want to share. Because I think there's a perception when you follow someone online that like you're seeing everything. I don't really know why, but I think a lot of us feel like if you follow along with somebody closely that you know everything about their day or you know everything about their life or whatever. And the truth is like you don't, because that person is very selective about what they're putting online. And once you realize that you can pick and choose and you don't have to share everything that online, it becomes much easier to make content because you don't feel quite as exposed, like, because you're in control of the narrative, you're in control of what you're putting out there. So that was very empowering for me. At the time I was working full time in a very demanding industry, and I would talk about being like a career girl and a horse girl and all of that, but I never shared exactly what I did, and that was intentional because I wanted to
Mm.
just keep that private. So I never actually talked about like what I did or what my days were like. And I thought that was going to be really hard at first because my career was such a huge part of who I was. But I realized like it really isn't. You can keep private whatever you want to keep private. So that was an intentional decision. And then I didn't want to I really like to deliver. So if I say I'm going to do something, like I want to be able to deliver on it, and
Yes.
over deliver usually. So I didn't want to talk about the jeans until I knew for sure that it was going to happen, that we were on sort of a glide path to these coming. So I didn't want to tell people and then, decide ultimately it wasn't going to work or I couldn't
Yeah.
afford it or whatever. And just kind of, I would feel like I had failed. So I didn't want to do that. So I was very clear about not sharing anything about them until I was sure it was going to happen. And then I was also very clear in the run up to the launch that I didn't want to share specifics about the features because I didn't want a competitor who has way more money than me and way more access to turn around a batch of jeans quickly. I didn't want a competitor to hear, oh, they've got a hidden cell phone pocket. Like we can slap that in a pair of jeans and beat her to
Mhm.
market. So I was very intentional about how we rolled out the features leading right up to the launch. So like there wouldn't be time between a competitor knowing about all of our features and us launching sales for somebody to like beat us to the punch. So that was very, very
1000%.
intentional as well.
Yeah. And I think too, if whether it was you or another brand who launched some of those features, again, if they weren't right from the start, like people just probably wouldn't see a need to try it again. And
Yeah.
I think it's always best to be the first when you're introducing something super new and different. And one of
Yeah.
the biggest things that so far I'm taking away from your story is that so much of how you built your personal brand and Mark West has been so intentional, which I love because I think there are a lot of people out there who kind of love the strategy and being really intentional with their decision making. But like we said a little bit earlier, sometimes they can be easily influenced by people who say, oh, just get it out there, put it out there. But that's not always the best decision. So I love that you always seem to have stayed true to what you knew was best for yourself and for the brand. And I'm sure you had people in your ear saying, oh, just get it out there and get the early feedback and see what happens. Was there anyone at the time who maybe pushed you to launch before you were ready, or you always stayed the
Yes.
course?
Always. I mean, I had, just like sort of like contacts I had made in the industry, like maybe they were making apparel or an equestrian product or whatever, or, business consultant strategist that I would talk to. I mean,
Yeah.
even, my own designer and factory were getting quite frustrated with me because, like, they don't make money on making you like one prototype, right?
Yeah.
So people were quite annoyed with me, I think, to be honest with you. But I just was like, no, I'm not, this is not ready. Like, we are not moving forward until this is as
Yeah.
close to perfect as I can get it. So, and then at
Good
some
for you.
point, like, I'm sure I could still be prototyping right now because I'm such a perfectionist. But like at some point you have to kind of like push yourself and be like, okay, this is it. This is as
Yeah.
close as you're going to get it. Like, now's the time. So I did have to kind of really give myself that shove to be like, okay, enough. Like, you have to move forward. So, yeah.
I mean, it sounds like it ultimately ended up being the perfect balance. You mentioned at times your designer and factory were probably frustrated with you. Is there one particular feature that was maybe the most difficult to include, but you knew like this is the hill I'm going to die on. This feature has to be there.
Yeah, so I would say our the gusset has is the feature that I personally feel very strongly about. It is obviously it's very different. It's not what you're used to seeing in a pair of jeans. We're all used to seeing it in like leggings or yoga pants, something like that. At this point, I think most people like the no front seam, leggings or whatnot, and just find them like more flattering and certainly more comfortable. But it's very different in a pair of jeans. It was very difficult to um we tweaked that design 1,000 times. But I feel very strongly about it because, like, again, so much of the industry is women, and so many of
Yeah.
us struggle with saddle sores and chafing and rubbing and just being very uncomfortable in our favorite place in the world. Like, all of us, if you're a horse girl, your favorite place is to be in the saddle. It's like,
Yes.
why are we putting up with jeans that are literally like rubbing holes in our body and are so uncomfortable? But we've just it's like it's totally a woman thing where we just sort of like suck it up, and it's just what it is, and it's fine, and we'll push through. Um so it was very important to me, like, jeans can be so much more comfortable. Like, you can ride and not be distracted by the chafing and the rubbing and like just have to like grit your teeth and keep going. Like, this can be better. So we worked really hard on that, and the sewing of it is incredibly complicated for the sewers who make the jeans, which again is part of the fact that it takes so long to get the jeans made is because the sewing
Yeah.
is incredibly complicated. um which makes the cost per jean to us much more expensive because of the sewing. So yeah, it's a feature that I fought for because I think it makes a huge difference in your ability to be comfortable and to stay focused and to not be distracted when you're training, which is
Yeah.
very important for us. And yeah, that's the feature that I think was the most difficult to pull off, and the one that I was like, we have to keep working on this, and we'll keep,
Mhm.
as we get bigger and whatever, we'll keep perfecting that design to make it as functional as possible. But
Yeah.
I think, and then once you ride in it, people are like, oh, like, okay,
Yes.
I get it.
Yeah,
So
you
so
really
yeah.
feel the difference. And well, like you
Mhm.
said, it's one of those things where you're making these jeans so that they can have these features that are different and unique. So if you have to sacrifice one of the most important ones, it almost feels like, well, then what's the point in doing this in the first place? So I love that you kind of stuck it out and knew
Yeah.
exactly what you wanted.
Yeah.
So once you finished prototyping and you say, okay, this is finally at a point where I feel super comfortable, confident, happy about how these
I have
are
never
looking.
felt super comfortable or confident a day in my life, Tara, but I like that narrative, so sure.
That's actually surprising to hear because it's so funny. Every time we chat, I always get this feel from you like you know exactly what you want in a way that's so admirable. Like truly. I've always admired that quality in you. So maybe if you're
I
not
have a lot of
feeling it deep
opinions,
down.
and I'm very particular. That is true. I would agree with that, but
No, to me, it comes across as confident and being sure of yourself. But I know what you mean. You could have the best product in the world, but because you're putting your name behind it, there's always going to come that little feeling of, oh, I don't know if this is quite ready because,
yeah.
now your name is behind it. So I
Yeah,
get it.
absolutely.
Okay, so
Absolutely.
so you're finally semi-confident and ready to launch.
Riddled by anxiety, but moving forward is kind of
Yeah,
my
on
MO.
on the down low, riddled with
Yeah.
anxiety. You mentioned that you were really intentional about rolling out those features, and I
Yeah.
think it was smart the way that you did this, which I want to get a little bit into your email launch campaign planning because I think that
Yep.
was really really smart the way you put that together. It ended up building this really fun hype and a little bit of mystique for your audience in a way that kept them super engaged. So,
Yep.
as you were preparing for the launch, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about that strategy from an email marketing perspective, because I know there was a lot of intention there, and then how that transferred over to social media and maybe some difference in the nuance of the two.
Yeah. So, as you know, I work very closely with Taylor from Gold Horse Media, our both of our good friend, and she has been incredibly instrumental in helping me with email marketing. I will never, I don't know, I didn't really know or understand how important the email marketing really is, and she has really pushed me to invest time and effort in that, and is tremendously helpful in making the emails look beautiful and all of the things. Um, so again, we sort of like un- announced MarkWest was coming in February of this year, February of 25. And then the jeans didn't actually arrive, and so we didn't start selling them until the very end of June, which was a little bit longer than I thought. I thought we'd have
Yeah.
jeans to sell in May, but the sewing is so complicated that it took longer than I was expecting. So we kind of had to tap dance for a few months because you can kind of like say this is coming, and people are like,
Mhm.
"Wow, great." Um, but then people are going to lose interest or kind of get annoyed when you don't like have a product, and so that was something
Yeah.
that we really struggled with, like in the early spring. And so at some point, I had this idea to like, okay, we got to start telling people like what's different about these jeans, but like we can't, like give the milk away here, right? Like we can't if we tell everybody what the features are now and then we don't have jeans to sell for months, either a competitor's going to get ahead of us or people are just going to like forget and lose interest, and what are we going to talk about? So I had this idea of kind of like dropping the features weekly. And so what we did
Mhm.
is we would Wednesday was like our feature drop day. And so if you were on the email list, you'd get an email on Wednesday with like what the new feature is that we're telling you about this week. And then we didn't post about it on social media until Thursday. So that was kind of an incentive to like, if you're interested in these jeans, if you want to know more, get on the email list because that's going to be the best place to like learn, kind of thing.
Yes.
So that was effective, and we had fun with that, and that kind of let us, like, tap dance for, like, 6 weeks when we were kinda like, "We don't know when the jeans are coming."
Buy
So
some
that
time.
was that worked well, and then the other thing that was effective for us was, when we launched sales, we did, a 72-hour Founding Cowgirls, presale, and so the price was the lowest we'll ever offer the jeans for 72 hours. So if you had been following along and wanted to try them, it was kind of like my reward, right, for following along, for
Yes.
being engaged with us, for getting on the email list. It's like this special price, and it was only available if you had gotten on our email list. So I think that was effective, and it was fun, and it kind of felt like you were getting in on something early. It was like a
Mhm.
reward for following along and being so patient. So that was kind of our strategy last spring and summer to get us to the launch. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that some of your email strategy came as a result of having a little bit of a gap between when you announced what you were making with Mark West, but then actually having product to sell. Because I think that is one of the trickiest things to get right when you're planning a launch is
Yeah.
when is the right time to announce, when is the right time to start building some hype, because if you start too early, people will kind of drop off and lose interest. If you start too late, sometimes people have to see something a couple times before they'll finally buy in. So it sounds like you had a lot of strong intention of always making it kind of value based in a sense too, where you weren't just kind of throwing copy out there. You were very intentional about these are the specific features. When
Yeah.
you started rolling out that info on your email list and social media, was there one feature that the cowgirls seemed to be most excited about over others? And did that surprise you? Was their favorite feature something that was a surprise?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously the hidden cell phone pocket is kind of like our like, wow, this is cool, feature. Um, and so that was the last one that we announced. We kind of like intentionally kind of did it from like least exciting to most exciting. Um, and so, there was a lot of excitement around that, which I expected. But what I did not expect was how excited people were going to be about the legs that don't twist. I kind of thought that
Ooh.
was like, I don't know, just like a micro feature almost. But I have to say, like, people are thrilled about that and
I
talk to me
know.
about it all the time now that they're like riding in the jeans and like seeing how they don't twist. And content that I post about the legs not twisting always performs really well. So that is something that like I think is kind of unique to like you only know about how annoying that is if you ride in a Western saddle in jeans. And so I
Yep.
think it was like, oh yeah, that happens to me. And I think that just kind of like really got people's attention because it was so specific, I think, to our
Yes.
experience. So yeah, that the reaction to that really surprised me.
Yeah. It's interesting, and I'm glad that you said that because it's similar to how it's almost easier to grow a very niche business in a very niche industry compared
Yeah.
to trying to be a small fish in a big pond. I think the no leg twisting is such a specific feature where your customers probably said, "Oh, she's a real cowgirl and she really gets it." You weren't
Yeah.
just kind of throwing on like glitzy features that are nice to have. You were solving like real problems that they probably just never thought any brand would come along and try to fix. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, for
that
sure.
that's super cool. So very soon after you launched in the summer, and I'm very curious to hear more about this because it's a part of the horse world that I honestly really don't know much about.
Yeah.
Pretty soon after launching, you had the opportunity to be the Gene at the Quarter Horse Congress. How did you get an opportunity like that, and what was the process for preparing for that?
So, to clarify, we were the official genes of the Quarter Horse Congress Queen candidates. So the Queen contest is very prestigious in the quarter horse world. It's been going since the late 60s, I believe. And it's kind of like Miss America for horse girls, basically.
Cool.
Girls compete in their local state or province. There's some Canadian girls as well. Associations, like earlier in the year to represent their state, and then they come to the Quarter Horse Congress in October to compete to be the Congress Queen for the next year. So actually, before we launched, the woman who runs the contest had reached out to me and asked, she'd seen us online and asked if I was interested in being a sponsor, basically, and donating jeans either to the queen, to, the top three candidates, all the girls, whatever. The prize package that the queen wins is just insane. Like it's a whole booth at the trade show at the Congress, and it's just she wins a custom saddle, she wins boots, she
Wow.
wins show clothes. It's unreal. And I remember going as a
Amazing.
kid and like seeing this, and you're just like blown away by all this
Yeah.
amazing stuff that the industry donates to the queen. So it was very
So
cool for
cool.
me to be asked to donate something. And so I said, sure, absolutely. Like, like let's kind of stay in touch. We're launching. I don't know what things are going to look like, but I'd love to be involved. So the week that we actually launched sales in June, she reached back out to me and she said, would you actually be interested in being the official jeans of the Congress
Wow.
Queen contest? Which just like,
Wow.
what? Like,
I
yeah, I
actually
would
just
be.
got chills when you said that.
Yeah, it was amazing.
So
So,
cool.
at the end of our launch week, she called me. I think we just previously emailed before. And we had a really long chat, and I found out that the reason that she kind of found out about us and had followed along is one of our models. I did a photo shoot
Mm.
early in the spring to show the jeans on different size girls, and it was very important to me that I use like actual horse girls who show on
Yep.
the quarter horse circuit. Like I don't want models. I don't like I just need girls who actually do this and get it.
Yes.
And so a girl that used to ride in my barn, Molly Froman, had applied to be one of our models, and I know her just a little bit, and I'd love to have you. So she came out to the shoe, and she Molly is actually has known the woman Jamie Drury, who runs the Congress Queen contest. She's known her since she was a baby, and so
Okay.
Jamie had seen that Molly was involved with the photo shoot from some of our content on social media, and so she said, I've known Molly so long, I knew she'd give me like the real scoop on these jeans. So I reached
Wow.
out to her and I said, how are these jeans? And Molly said, oh, they're amazing, like the absolute best, whatever. And so basically, because of Molly, who's been just a tremendous supporter of our brand, from her kind of like good word that she put in to Jamie, who runs the contest, that's why she reached out.
Wow.
So it was really just that like connection, friendship that we've developed with Molly that gave us this opportunity to be the official jeans of the Queens, which was incredible.
Incredible. And that's another thing I'm going to take from your story. Your network has pulled through so many times in
Yeah.
so many different ways throughout your
Yeah.
entire journey.
Yeah,
I
for
mean,
sure.
and people wouldn't even think that maybe it's a model that ends up getting them, an incredible connection or a past contact from a former barn.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think, the horse industry is so word of mouth driven.
Yeah.
And that's how I think a lot of us make decisions, about what barns to go with,
Yes.
what tack to use, what products to use, all of
Yes.
that. And so I've always been very aware of that. And I've had, you never know who you're suddenly going to get an opportunity through, which is something I
Yes.
learned in my, old career too. But we've been tremendously lucky
True.
to have a lot of people like really get on board and be supportive, and just really help us and open doors for
Yeah.
us. And I'm just so grateful for that.
Yeah. Yeah. You never know who's watching. And I think speaking of marketing, you did a phenomenal job throughout
Oh,
the
thank you.
Congress, just sharing the behind the scenes, because I think people love seeing like the real deal, behind
Yeah.
a brand. So I think you really were smart in taking people along for that journey. So very shortly after the Congress, you started preparing to launch batch two because you
Yeah.
pretty much sold out of your first
Yeah.
batch, which I think is
Yeah.
every brand owner's dream, to sell out of that first batch.
Yeah. We had like just a couple of pairs. You kind of take a guess at what sizes are going to be the most popular.
Mhm.
And I guessed wrong a little bit. So I had like two pairs of like unpopular sizes
Okay.
did not sell out from the first batch, but everything else was gone very quickly, which was a blessing and a curse for sure.
Well, I am curious to know, what you maybe learned from selling out of your first batch that you brought into preparing and kind of ordering and preparing inventory for batch two. So was there anything that you learned from the first launch going into the second that you maybe wanted to change, or things that worked really well that you wanted to replicate?
Yeah, so I think the first thing I realized is that, like, we need to have more inventory, right? Like, I think one of my big goals was that I wanted to sell out the first batch. That was, like, the
Yeah.
most important thing that I could think about. But that is wonderful, but then you have people in the industry who maybe didn't buy them right away, but now they've seen their friends in them and they wanna try them. But you don't have their jeans. You don't have their size in stock. And so
Yeah.
it's like, how do you uh how do you keep that person interested? How do you like get them
Yes.
to come back when their size is in stock? People don't want to wait. Like they just, they want what they want. We're all used to
True.
Amazon bringing what we ordered the next
Yes.
day. So it's like, how do you keep those people interested or like get them to try the jeans if you're out of stock, right? So I realized I needed to have more inventory, which is a big upfront expense for us. So that's
Yeah.
something I've had to navigate. It was really nice to have data on what
Yes.
sizes actually sold, so I knew I could make a more informed decision about how many pairs of each size to order. So that was really nice. Um, I think, we had feedback from people who had ridden in them, so we know kind of like what how to how to message things better, how to
Yeah.
explain things better. I think I learned um that you think you're sort of shouting from the rooftops all the time, but there's still a lot of people out there that like may have seen you online but don't know the jeans have a hidden cell phone
Mhm.
pocket or whatever. So
Yeah.
you really start to realize like, oh, you do have to repeat yourself all the time. And it's okay to
Mhm.
kind of like keep hitting the same points over and over and over because people are
Yes.
not necessarily absorbing what you think you said 100 times.
Yeah.
So that I think kind of informed some of our marketing and our social media content and that sort of thing. Um, and yeah, it just takes like such a long time to get them made, right? So I put in our purchase order for this second batch on July 31st, and we're talking here
Wow.
in December, and like they're going to start landing this week. So it's like a 4-month process at least
Yeah.
to actually get a batch of jeans made. So that lead time is really a killer, which is why I encourage people, like, when we have them in stock, buy the pairs that you want. If you know you
Yes.
want more than one pair, like, just get them now, because
Yep.
we make small batches and they sell out quickly. Hopefully they will again, knock on wood. Um, but yeah, so it's we learned a ton, and you sort of think, oh, you're going to get through the launch and you're going to like exhale. And I just feel like every single day gets busier and busier and busier and busier.
Mhm.
Because you're trying to do more, you're trying to do it smarter, you're trying to grow, all these
Yes.
things. So
Yes.
lots of lessons learned, lots more to learn and to improve on in the future, but we've tried to, like, make some tweaks based on the information we got from the first launch.
I love what you said a little bit earlier, where people may not see every single piece of content that you post. And I think that's so important to keep in mind, especially going into a launch, because sometimes people have such a hard time prepping content, or they launch and then they kind of ghost or go silent because they're like, well, I already told everyone everything that they need to know about this brand or about this product. But it's so true. Not every one in your audience sees every piece of content that you put out there. And I love the way that you've kind of added new variety to it now too. Like, now that you've sold out the first batch, you have the opportunity to like show some of your customers and the cowgirls that are actually riding in the jeans. So that's just another way to continuously, talk about the features and promote them.
Yeah, like, now I think we have, I'm so blessed to be able to say that every single review on our website is 5 stars. And
Amazing.
we have, just these tremendous reviews, so many, like, sweet DMs and comments from people. I have,
Yeah.
like, video and photos of different girls of different sizes in them. So we're lucky to have, like, so much more to go on, so much more to offer
Yes.
somebody now than just, like, me being like, "Trust me, they're great." Like, okay, well, we know you think they're great because obviously you have to. It's your product, right? But now I feel like I really have this, like, just incredibly supportive network of customers who have just been such a blessing to me, who are, like, out there kind of advocating for me, which means
Yeah.
just the world. So that's been great.
Yeah. Yeah, you have a really strong community, which kind of leads me into my next question. We've talked a little bit about the idea of legacy, and I would love to know what you hope your legacy for Mark West will be on the industry as a whole.
That's a really lovely question. I mean, and you know this, I want Mark West to be the jean of choice. If you ride in a Western saddle, I don't care what discipline it is. I don't care how old you are, what size you are. If you ride in a Western saddle, I want you to ride in these jeans. Um, Not just because I want Mark West to be a big brand and a success, but because I want you to experience how much better the fit is and how much more comfortable it is to ride in them and how much more confident you're going to feel in the saddle, because that's my favorite place to be. I know it's all of our favorite places to be. I know our time there is limited. And like, we need to be able to really enjoy that time. So I want you
Yes.
to ride in Mark West just so you can experience how much more comfortable you're going to be. Um, so yeah, so I want Mark West to be like the jean of choice in the Western industry.
Mhm.
And I want it to hopefully, really, really grow beyond the Western industry at some point, because I do think our fit
Ooh.
is so good and so flattering for so many women. So I'd love to offer, different styles that maybe aren't sort of specifically designed for riding in the future, but like, this is
Love
always
that.
going to be like a cowgirl based Western industry. Like, these jeans are always going to be made for real horse girls who ride, not just,
Yes.
people who are um go to a country concert or go to NFR or anything like that. We love those people too. And like, please, by all means, wear MarkWest and feel confident and beautiful in them. But like, these jeans are made for girls who really ride, and that will always be sort of the ethos of this brand. And as far as legacy, like, I just want MarkWest and everybody who wears them to really be like, really kind, really supportive, really encouraging horse girls, like the sort of horse girls that you want at the back gate at the show cheering you on, the sort of people who are gonna, like, oh, you're in the first class in the morning. Well, we better be up there to like, cheer you on, and oh, you're not going to show till midnight. All right, well, we'll be up there kind of thing. And I've been very lucky throughout my horse career to have those sort of horse girl friends. And that's how I want MarkWest to feel, is like we're all here for you. Like, this brand is designed to be there when you're out chasing big dreams with your horses. We're there to support you for that. And I just want it to feel very welcoming and inclusive and supportive. Just like, I don't know, kind of like a soft place to be if you're a horse girl. That's kind of what I hope the feeling people will take away from MarkWest is.
Yeah. Well, I think that is the feeling people already are taking away.
Oh,
If you see the way, truly, if you see the way people talk about your brand, post about your brand, the reviews that people leave, so you're well on your way to doing that already.
I hope so.
Well, my final question that I always leave guests with is, if you were sitting across from a fellow equestrian entrepreneur trying to build their brand, what is the one lesson from your journey that you would want them to walk away with?
To go for it and to not make excuses about how hard it is or how much work it is. So that's kind of like encouraging and also like a little critical at the same time. Like, yeah, it is really hard to make content and to show up consistently and to keep pushing forward. And yeah, like some days I don't want to do that either. I would like to take a break. I would like to, not show up online. I would like to, not sort of like be plotting a batch of jeans that won't land for 6 months. But like, that's what it takes. And I think horse girls are really good at working really hard for something we want, because everything in the horse industry, you have to work very hard to get any sort of success that you ever have. So like, we know how to work hard and we can do it, but like it takes a tremendous amount of daily consistency when perhaps you'd rather be doing something else. But like, there's so many tools at our disposal to sort of like show up consistently and to stay in front of our audience and to really build something that we didn't have just a few years ago. So like, yes, it's going to be hard, but like, you have to do it if you want to build something. So yeah, it takes a tremendous amount of consistency, a tremendous amount of hard work, and just like grinding away. But like, if you believe in something and you want something, we know how to work for it. And that's like our sort of horse girl superpower. So like, put that to work and create whatever it is in your head, and be relentless about it. And you can do it. So just go for it and give it your all.
Yeah. I love that you say you have to be relentless about it, because I think, sometimes, we see all these, cute, fun day in the life videos on social media that sometimes glamorizes what it looks like to build a brand or create a product or run a business. But the truth is, there are hard decisions that have to be made. There are days where, like you said, we wake up, we don't feel like creating content, but we have to keep putting ourselves out there. So I love that it's a little bit of a tough love in a sense, where it's like, it's not just going to happen. You have to work really hard and make it happen. So I think those day in the life videos, like I think a lot of us will watch those from people who are successful, and you think like, oh, she's so lucky, like she got to like go to the gym this morning and like ride and like, but like,
Yes, she is, but like the amount of effort it took to make that little 15-second video that you're seeing is so much more work in a day that most people don't even comprehend. So it's a ton of work to do that. I think if you pay attention to any successful brand or creator or whatever online and really start to think about, well, like what did it take to like shoot this video? Like what all did they have to do to like do this? You realize like, oh, they're like really working at this. Like this is not just something that's like coming together seamlessly. Once you realize that like the people who are doing what you want to do are absolutely like working their butt off every day to do it, you realize like, oh, this is going to take a lot of work. And either you kind of lock into that or you don't. So
yes.
Yeah.
You have to really want it. And I mean, one thing horse girls are good at is that grit and determination, like we said. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Whitney, so much for joining us and sharing your story. And if you haven't already, batch 2 is launched, right? People can go on.
You can order regular inseams right now. The tall inseams are just a couple of weeks behind in production, so we'll be opening up sales for those soon as I have them in hand. But yeah, order your regular inseams now. I'm shipping jeans this week. So
amazing. I love it. Well, thank you, Whitney.
Thank you. This has been great.